An officer's flashlight cut through a raging snowstorm, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A German shepherd was hanging from a tree, moments from death. But the rescue that followed wasn't just about survival. It was a miracle that would leave the world in tears. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The wind howled through the empty streets as Officer Mark gripped the wheel of his patrol car. Snow pelted against the windshield, turning the world into a blur of white. Nights like this were dangerous. Roads slick, visibility poor, but Mark knew his duty didn't stop just because of a storm. He slowed near the edge of the forest, scanning the shadows. Something caught his eye, faint tracks in the snow, leading away from the road and disappearing into the trees. They weren't from a car or person. These were paw prints, uneven and frantic, like an animal running in distress. His instincts sharpened instantly. Mark parked and stepped into the blizzard, snow crunching beneath his boots. The beam of his flashlight cut through the swirling flakes, following the desperate trail deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavier, colder, but his gut told him he was walking towards something more than a lost animal. Something was very wrong. Mark pressed deeper into the forest, the storm swirling like a wall around him. The paw prints grew more erratic, as though the animal had struggled. Then his flashlight froze on a sight that made his blood run cold. A German shepherd was tied cruelly to a tree, ropes cutting into his body. The dog thrashed weakly, his breath forming sharp clouds in the freezing air. His paws were raw, blood staining the snow where he had fought to break free. Each pull only tightened the ropes around his chest and neck. Mark's heart pounded. This wasn't an accident. Someone had left him here to die. The shepherd's eyes met his, wide with fear, yet still burning with defiance. A low whimper escaped his throat, swallowed quickly by the storm. Mark's jaw tightened, fury rising. No officer ever prepared for this sight, yet here it was, a loyal, noble creature abandoned to the cruelest fate. He knew he had only minutes to act. Mark dropped to his knees in the snow, pulling at the frozen ropes. The shepherd growled instinctively, his fear fueling every sound, but his strength was fading fast. "Easy, boy," Mark whispered, his gloved hands working furiously. The coarse rope was digging deep, leaving raw wounds across the dog's chest and neck. Snowflakes clung to the shepherd's trembling fur as he fought to stay upright. Every tug weakened him further. Mark's flashlight flickered in the storm, throwing shadows that made the moment feel even more desperate. He yanked at the knots, fingers numb, heart racing. Finally, with a sharp snap, one rope gave way, but others still held tight. The shepherd let out a broken whimper, collapsing sideways, his body pressed against the tree. Mark grit his teeth, sawing through the last binding with his pocket knife. When the final rope fell, the dog crumpled into the snow, too weak to stand. Mark wrapped his arms around the limp body, whispering, "You're safe now. I've got you." Mark lifted the German shepherd into his arms, feeling the animal's frail weight press against his chest. The dog's body trembled violently, breath shallow, eyes barely staying open. Snow swirled around them, the storm showing no mercy. Mark tightened his coat around the dog, shielding him from the biting wind as best he could. Stumbling back through the woods, Mark pushed forward, every step carving deep tracks in the snow. His patrol car's flashing lights blinked faintly through the trees like a beacon. The shepherd whimpered softly, a pitiful sound that cut straight through Mark's heart. "Hold on, buddy. Just a little longer," he whispered, his voice shaking from both cold and desperation. At last, he reached the car. Mark gently placed the dog on the back seat, wrapping him in every blanket he could find. Cranking the heat to full blast, he sped toward the nearest emergency clinic. The storm raged outside, but inside the vehicle, a fragile fight for life had just begun. The emergency vet team rushed the shepherd into their clinic, lifting him carefully onto a stainless steel table. Mark stood nearby, snow still clinging to his uniform, his chest heaving. The vet examined the wounds, frowning deeply. "These scars aren't new," she murmured. "He's been abused for a long time." The words twisted in Mark's gut. She pointed to old marks hidden beneath his matted fur, healed welts, burns, and scars from past beatings. His ribs protruded sharply, evidence of starvation. He wasn't just left out there tonight. The vet continued grimly. Someone wanted him to suffer. Mark clenched his fists, anger burning as he realized the cruelty this dog had endured. But amid the pain, there was resilience. Even battered and broken, the shepherd had fought to survive. He had howled into the storm until someone heard. Mark's eyes softened as he whispered, "You're stronger than most men I know." At that moment, he knew this wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of something far greater. The days that followed were filled with slow healing. The shepherd remained weak, wrapped in warm blankets at the clinic. At first, he flinched at every sound, his body recoiling whenever someone reached too quickly. But when Mark entered the room, something changed. His ears perked, his eyes following him with cautious curiosity. Mark visited daily, sitting quietly beside the dog's bed. He spoke in low tones, recounting patrol stories as though the shepherd could understand every word. At first, there was no response, only silence. But one afternoon, as Mark rested a hand near the dog, a trembling paw stretched forward, touching his fingers lightly. It was the first spark of trust. From then on, progress came slowly but steadily. The shepherd accepted food from Mark's hand, even wagged his tail faintly when greeted. Watching him heal stirred something inside Mark. He realized the truth. This wasn't just a dog he had rescued. This was a survivor, and perhaps a partner destined to stay. Weeks later, the shepherd was strong enough to leave the clinic. Mark signed the adoption papers without hesitation, officially making him part of his family. As they stepped outside together, the once broken dog now walked with a steady stride, his coat glistening under the sun. A second chance had truly begun. Life at home transformed quickly. The shepherd learned routines, waiting faithfully by the door when Mark grabbed his jacket and curling at his feet each night. Training came naturally, as though the dog remembered the discipline buried deep within. What surprised Mark most was his gentleness with children, always lowering himself to their level, eyes soft with patience. The story spread through the community. Neighbors stopped by just to see the miracle dog who had survived cruelty and found love again. Mark often caught people smiling at the sight of them together, an officer and his rescued shepherd walking side by side. In saving the dog's life, Mark realized his own had been changed forever too. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Mark paused, watching his companion playfully roll in the snow. He thought back to the night he'd found him tied to that tree, moments from death. "You've come so far," Mark whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The shepherd bounded back, pressing his head gently against Mark's chest. The community, too, had changed. People who heard their story began donating to shelters, adopting strays, and speaking out against abuse. What began as one act of mercy had rippled outward, touching countless lives. Mark smiled, running a hand through the shepherd's fur. "You didn't just survive," he murmured. "You restored faith in me and in everyone."